130 aircraft on the order book, a cruise speed of Mach 1.7 at nearly 60,000 feet, and a ghost the entire industry thought it had buried back in 2003. For 20 years, supersonic passenger flight has been a settled question, a beautiful, expensive failure. Concorde flew, Concorde lost money, Concorde retired, and the math was so brutal it helped drag down two of Europe's proudest flag carriers. The verdict was in. Faster than sound travel was a museum piece. And yet, while everyone treated it as a closed case, three of the biggest names in aviation quietly did something strange. United, American, and Japan Airlines all lined up for the same idea that nearly bankrupted everyone who touched it before. So what do they think changed? That's the real question. What's actually different this time? And is it enough to beat the math that killed Supersonic? Or are these airlines walking into the same trap with better marketing? Let's start with what's on paper, because it's more serious than you'd expect. United Airlines moved first. In June 2021, the carrier signed an agreement to acquire 15 Overture aircraft, with options for 35 more. But that signature came with strings attached. The deal was contingent on the aircraft meeting United's standards for safety, operating performance, and sustainability. Standards Boom would have to prove it could hit. Then American went further. In August 2022, American announced an agreement to purchase up to 20 Overtures, with options for 40 more. And here's the part that made people pay attention. American placed a non-refundable deposit on those 20 aircraft. Real money committed up front, but the same condition followed it. The purchase is subject to Boom meeting industry standard operating, performance, and safety requirements. The third name goes back further. Japan Airlines entered a strategic partnership with Boom all the way back in 2017, including a pre-order for 20 aircraft. But this one is non-binding, tied to collaborative work on passenger experience and operations rather than a hard commitment. Add it together and you get that headline number: 130 aircraft across 3 carriers. But read the fine print and a pattern jumps out. Every one of these deals is conditional. Not one is a firm, irreversible purchase. Each hinges on Boom meeting standards, some of which don't fully exist yet. That's not 3 airlines betting on a sure thing. That's 3 airlines buying an option on a maybe. And here's the catch: every one of these airlines lived through the exact reasons this shouldn't work. Enter Concorde, the ghost in every one of these boardrooms. Here's what most people get wrong about Concorde. It wasn't killed by technology. The technology was extraordinary. It cruised at twice the speed of sound for nearly 3 decades. What killed it was economics and a wall of regulation that never came down. By most historical accounts, Concorde grew out of a 1962 agreement between Britain and France. A prototype first flew in 1969. Commercial service began in 1976 with British Airways and Air France, and across its entire life, only 14 aircraft ever entered commercial service. 14. That's not a fleet, that's a curiosity. By 2003, the project was finished. The retirement was driven by long-standing economic misalignment, aging systems, and the cost of expensive modifications after the Air France Flight 4590 crash in July 2000. Reports from the time point to all of these factors stacking up at once. The plane that broke the sound barrier simply couldn't break even. But the deeper problem wasn't the crash and it wasn't the age. It was a rule written decades earlier. In 1973, the United States banned civil overland supersonic flight. The regulation, FAR 91.817, prohibits civil aircraft from flying faster than Mach 1 over US land without special authorization. And it goes further. It restricts those aircraft from operating to and from American airports unless no sonic boom reaches the ground at all. No clever workarounds. Think about what that does to a route map. If you can't go supersonic over land, you're confined to the oceans. The fastest your plane can ever shine is over open water. Everywhere else, it's just an expensive subsonic jet. That overland ban is the cage. Remember it, because the entire question of whether Boom survives comes back to it. Enter Boom, and a pitch built specifically to dodge each one of Concorde's failure points. Overture isn't being sold as a nostalgia rebuild. Boom's whole argument is that its engineered as a direct answer to the specific things that sank its predecessor. Start with the basics. Overture is designed to cruise at Mach 1.7 over water at an altitude near 60,000 feet. That's a touch slower than Concorde's top speed, and that's deliberate. The company says it's chasing efficiency, not bragging rights. Then there's the cabin. Overture is planned as an all-business class aircraft, seating somewhere between 64 and 80 passengers, depending on the source. And that's the strategic heart of it. This isn't mass transport. It's a premium tool aimed at the travelers who'll pay the most to save the most time. A small, expensive cabin for a small, expensive market. The design choices go after Concorde's worst habits. Overture is engineered to avoid afterburners, and afterburners were a huge source of Concorde's noise and its enormous fuel appetite. Instead, Boom is leaning on modern composite materials and aerodynamic optimization, and the company markets the jet as running on sustainable aviation fuel with claimed net zero potential. It's a clever pitch, premium only, over water only, cleaner burning, but notice what that pitch quietly does. It narrows the airplane down to a tiny slice of the market, a jet that can only fly profitable routes over the ocean to the richest passengers with no afterburner. Is that addressable market really big enough to sustain 130 jets? Hold that thought, because the single biggest variable here isn't the airframe at all, it's what's bolted under the wings. Two unsolved problems define whether any of this is real. The first is the engine, the second is that regulatory wall. Start with the engine because it's the wilder story. Boom is reportedly developing its own turbofan, called Symphony, 4 of them on each Overture. Working with Florida Turbine Technologies, Standard Aero and Calibrium Additive, AGE subsidiary, and it's building this in-house after ending its earlier collaboration with Rolls-Royce. According to reports, core prototype parts are in production, with tests planned for 2026. Now think about what that means. A startup building a brand new supersonic engine, mostly on its own, without a major established engine maker as its partner. That's one of the hardest things to do in all of aerospace. At the time, going in-house may look like control and independence. Later, it could prove to be the single heaviest weight the whole program has to carry. And then there's the cage. Because Overture is bound by that 1973 overland ban, Boom has positioned it for transoceanic routes. New York to London, the Pacific crossings. Exactly the missions that keep it legal. The route map stays compliant, but it also stays small. It can only expand if the regulation itself changes. So that's the real question buried in this whole story. What could possibly open the cage? And here's the strange part. The thing that could break that cage open isn't being built by Boom at all. It's a NASA experiment. Enter the X-59. NASA's X-59 Quest is a quiet supersonic technology demonstrator developed with Lockheed Martin. Its entire purpose is to attack the one thing that's blocked overland supersonic flight since 1973, the boom itself. The aircraft is shaped to turn that violent sonic boom into something far softer. Not a boom at all, but a low-level thump. If that sounds like a gimmick, look at the plan behind it. The X-59 is designed to fly over selected American communities, gathering ground-based sound measurements and surveying the residents below about what they actually heard. NASA then plans to share that data with regulators to help build acceptable noise thresholds based on evidence rather than the old blanket fear of the boom. That's the lever. If the data shows people on the ground can live with a thump, the entire legal foundation for the overland ban could be re-examined, and if that happens, Overture's route map stops being a thin necklace of ocean crossings and suddenly stretches across continents. But here's where you have to be careful. The X-59 is a demonstrator gathering data. It is not a rule change. It collects measurements and surveys. It doesn't rewrite federal regulation. The optimistic version of this story treats Quiet Skies as a done deal. The honest version says it's a research project that might someday inform a future decision. Those are very different things. And here's what even Quiet Skies can't fix. It's the number airlines say quietly when the cameras are off. Even if Boom nails its in-house engine, even if NASA's thump rewrites the rulebook, there's a problem buried in the physics that no amount of marketing can erase. Flying faster than sound costs energy, a lot of it. According to a scientific assessment from ICAO's Environmental Committee, future supersonic aircraft are expected to emit more than 3 times as much carbon dioxide per passenger kilometer as a normal subsonic jet. And that's before you count the extra warming from water vapor and nitrogen oxides released high in the stratosphere, where they do more damage, more than 3 times the carbon, for the same seat, on the same trip. This is where the sustainable fuel story runs into a wall. Boom's net zero pitch leans heavily on SAF. But independent analyses point out that sustainable fuel doesn't eliminate the non-CO2 warming, and it doesn't erase the raw energy penalty baked into high Mach flight. You can change what you burn. You can't change how much energy it takes to push a body through the air at Mach 1.7. Even inside the industry, the doubt is real. Reportedly, United's own CEO, Scott Kirby, has put Overture's odds of success at 50-50. The man at the airline that ordered the thing first puts its chances at a coin flip. That tells you everything about how this is viewed behind closed doors. And the timeline reflects that caution. Boom has reportedly targeted passenger service around 2029, according to news coverage. But that's a target, not a certification date, not a confirmed entry into service. Now remember those 130 orders. Remember that every single deal was conditional, hedged, reversible. This is exactly why. The orders are written that way precisely because this math isn't settled. Airlines didn't buy certainty. They bought a place in line with an exit door attached. So what's actually different this time? Quite a lot, honestly. Modern engines without afterburners, sustainable fuel, composite materials, and a NASA experiment that could, eventually, legalize the very skies Concorde was banned from. These aren't small things, but what hasn't changed is the part that matters most. The underlying energy and emissions penalty of flying faster than sound is still there, stubborn and physical, sitting underneath every glossy rendering. The 130 orders aren't a verdict. They're an option on a bet that hasn't been won. The next few years of X-59 data and the first real tests of that Symphony engine will decide which story this becomes. Either Supersonic returns as a genuine business, or it becomes the most expensively relearned lesson in the history of aviation. So what do you think? If Boom can make Supersonic quiet, but it's still 3 times dirtier per seat than the jet sitting next to it, do you believe regulators and passengers will let it fly anyway? Tell me where you draw the line.